This week's bi-weekly IWFM members Zoom call. I'm Michael Clark. I sit on the Network Steering Committee and will act as chair today. Today's call was rescheduled from last week following our annual conference, which took place on the Tuesday of that week. I hope we had an opportunity. I hope everybody had an opportunity to maybe join us for the conference. And if you didn't, or if there's any areas you particularly want to follow up, we'll be, in due course, information will be going out via the website for members, I understand. Today we'll hear from Bill Vernon, Acting Secretariat for the Network, with an update from EFIC. And following Bill's report, then I'll introduce Bradley Larkan from KLEIBERIT for a presentation. So I'll hand over to Bill now for the report for EFIC. Thanks, Bill.
A brief report from the European Furniture Industry Confederation as to how the industry has been behaving across Europe for the past 9 months, up till the end of September. Austria minus 20% on production and minus 18% on exports. Belgium figures are not up to date just yet, but minus 4.5% in turnover and minus 10% on the mattress segment, with an increase of plus 11% on the kitchen segment. France has a decline overall of between 15 and 20%. The furniture shops are open and have stayed open, and the kitchen kitchens are doing well there. Germany, basically, orders are up by between 5 and 10%, but they've slowed in September, and overall Germany has done extremely well throughout the COVID period in terms of production. Hungary is down by 15% and exports are down by 20%. Italy haven't got their figures yet, as by the way Ireland doesn't either. It's nearly impossible to get statistics here in Ireland. Latvia have been doing okay, but their exports to Sweden and the UK are down by 45%, but their home market is up and imports are up. Norway is the exception overall. Norway's figures, their production in this year has increased by 10% overall, and their exports have increased by 8%. So Norway is obviously doing something right. Portugal's had a very bad time, with figures showing a 30%, a decrease of 30% in turnover for the bedding and lighting segment, and 25% in the production of furniture generally. And Sweden has had a decline of 20% in turnover in the office segment, and an overall decline of 4% in exports. That's basically what we've got from Europe this month. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
You can send a copy of this. I can send a copy of this to anybody who'd like it.
Yeah, interesting to find out in due course what Norway and what's how they're managing to improve their position, as well as Germany hold its own.
Yes.
Probably some lessons or interesting information there. Right, I'll move on to introduce our speaker today. We have Bradley Larkan. Bradley's General Manager of KLEIBERIT UK, Ireland and South Africa, also VP responsibilities for North America. KLEIBERIT are a worldwide multinational adhesives company operating on all continents. In the furniture industry in Ireland, I understand their main area relates to PUR adhesives for edge banding. Bradley is going to deliver a clear explanation of the REACH legislation, REACH being an acronym for Registration, Evaluation, Authorization and Restriction of Chemicals. This is something that will affect all companies using adhesives and lacquers and will impact on every factory. So if you'd like to contribute we take questions and answers at the end of Bradley's presentations, and if you want to use the chat tool to put up any questions in the interim, which we can get to then. Without further ado, Bradley, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you for the opportunity and the invite to come and chat with you and your association with the team members for Ireland. And thank you for the opportunity. So let me get on with trying to share something with you guys here. Can you all see that?
Yes, the screen is up there. You have it.
Okay, so let me just see if we can get.
Might be able to enlarge the presentation a bit further. Let's say let's keep going.
To be a way there to. How about that? Is that any better?
That looks good, Bradley.
Okay, right, and we can go then. So, right, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to discuss here, as Michael has explained, is REACH and the restrictions that isocyanates, one key raw material that's used in the formulation of making any cross-linking chemical that is that uses a polymer base and isocyanate as the catalyst for cross-linking reaction process. Most items that fall under this category are certainly adhesives. Lacquers are one of the other things. Paints are the other things. Foam materials for the insulation production of insulation panels. The automotive industry uses a lot of this thing, so it covers a wide variety of industries where isocyanate is a key raw material. The presentation that's been given today is a presentation that was given at the beginning of the REACH announcement by Europe as to what the industry and the responsibilities of the industry is going forward. And we'll take you through not every single detail of it, because I don't want to teach you guys about chemicals. I just want to give you a broad background as to what the impact is and the responsibilities that each individual company is going to have to take into account moving forward into 2021 through to 2023. Right. So there's certain areas that that will be exempt from these rules, none of which are going to apply really to the industries that we're dealing with in Ireland. It's the obligations of training and additional measures that companies are going to have to take, and also the safe use of isocyanate, which is a chemical that has health and safety implications. So isocyanates, as I mentioned earlier on, is a raw material that is used in formulations where a cross-linking action takes place to get a final cure of the product. So in other words, once this chemical cross-links with water, mainly, and another polymer, it finally reaches a complete cured process, which brings to the party the end use of high heat resistant final glue line or lacquer finish, a very high water resistant end characteristic of your final product, and one that cannot be dismembered or reheated again after it is used. There's 3 different types of polyurethane that are involved in the adhesive industries. It's the standard polyurethane hot melt, which is the most common in the marketplace, which has quite a large amount of isocyanate in its final formulation that reaches the marketplace. Normally contains anything from 1 to 5% monomeric isocyanate, normally being in the middle of around about 2.5%. Then you've got technology offerings called low emissions, which has a reduced amount of the monomeric isocyanates of less than 1%, but greater than 0.1%. And then finally, the newest of all polyurethane offerings in the marketplace, which is micro emissions, which has less than 0.1%. of isocyanate in it. And these will become clearer a little bit later as to what the implications are of choosing one of these three options. And here you can see that in the standard products, you have on your labeling requirements on all the products that you'll be using, the GHS label called harmful. It's the picture of a torso with these risk factors printed on each label and on each material safety data sheet. And the big one of concern here is risk factor H351, which is the suspicion of causing or having carcinogenic effects. Yeah. And it also has effects on respirations and sanitizers as far as breathing. So people that have a tendency for asthma and the likes of that are in the workplace and are working with these types of chemicals could have a negative impact on their health. By moving down to the second option, where you can have a low emissions product, because of the lower content of isocyanate, it still carries the harmful pictogram. However, the need to put H351 risk category in is no longer required on the data sheets or on the label. And then the final product in the micro emissions range does not carry, it does not have any risk factor category requirements, and it looks like any other normal adhesive label, like a typical EVA edge banding adhesive. So these product offerings are available as well to the marketplace. And this, as I said, depending on which of these categories you choose, has an impact on what your obligations are as far as training later on in the year. That just discusses those categories in more depth. Each country has similar overlaps of what is required depending on what which country they've signed up to or which category of training they've signed up to. But in Ireland, we normally follow the German operations. Okay, so the time frame for these restrictions on diisocyanate runs over quite a long period. So this started way back in June 2015 and is ongoing and is still running at the moment. Yeah, the decisions about training are in fact still not taken by the European Union. It's still in a technical working committee, but some of the outcomes of this have been discussed as likely outcomes at this stage. So we've discussed. Okay, so where are these going to be visible to the general industry? Where are you going to find them? So you're going to find them in liquid products, like, for example, you've probably heard the brand name or the generic name for liquid polyurethanes called Gorilla Glue. So these are liquid adhesives that, again, react with moisture, will be affected by this. Two-component products where you're taking an A component and a B component, mixing it together and using it in your process, it will be applicable to those products. And then you have PUR hot melts, which is, again, typically used in edge banding that you will see within the marketplaces that you're working in. So some of the areas that you have to consider where the exemptions and the training requirements are no longer needed is when you're using the glue or the lacquer or whatever the case may be for these products. If you're using them at temperatures of below 45 degrees, when I say 45 degrees, this is not ambient temperature now, because we certainly will never get to that in Ireland, but we're talking about the application temperature of the adhesive. So if you're applying adhesives at less than 45 degrees, you're exempt from any training obligations. However, with products like hot melts, as they are in their name, hot melts are applied hot, and those products are all applied above 45 degrees, so cannot be exempt. Spray applications, most of the products that we have here, none of these isocyanate products should ever be sprayed, because they will go into an atomization process, and those atomized particles, breathing in those atomized particles is not a good. Switch this off. Okay. So, yeah, some of the things you probably won't have these within the industry, but some of the customers that you'll be selling your products to, that are using your products or within the furniture industry, may be using products like you see on the screen here, with foam products that are sealing in windows, products that require sealants, like sealant glues for hanging up mirrors, for sealing joints, all fall under these categories. So they're exempt from professional training obligations. Okay, so when it comes down to polyurethane hot melts, which is what I'm discussing today, all workers who use polyurethane products need to be trained. Management within the companies that employ people that are using the product have to be trained. It is an official training course that is going to be needed, and not just a attendance training course. It is a fully fledged accredited training course that will be needed, that will take anything from 4 to 16 hours over a period of time. The training is dependent on the application as to where you're using it, whether it be for a laminating application or an edge banding application or whatever. So the higher the risk category, the more training will be required. Workers that are not physically working with the product, that are working in your administration departments or in your offices, do not have to be trained, but anyone within the plant that has direct responsibility for the use of the products do need to be trained. The training programs that will eventually be issued will have a European-wide recognition after training. And then there's going to be a definition of the groups that are going to be going in there as to what training is needed, whether it is a short hour training or a much longer training period. And just to reiterate here that these 4 hours or 16 hours do not have to take place in one sitting. They can take place over a period of time to make up those hours. So to determine where and what risk categories your employees and yourselves are exposed to, a risk assessment needs to be carried out in the workplace, identifying these areas of where the risks are lying, and that can then determine which of the training courses is applicable to your operation. So these areas here are areas where the exact final definition of the training is still under discussion. However, the training is going to be integrated into existing occupational health and safety training programs. The training will be done by a qualified person. That qualified person at this stage cannot be the local salesperson for the chemicals that are being sold. It has to be an independent training program that is either run by associations like yourselves to get a qualified technical committee trained in these to be able to give that training to its members. There can be a training of the trainer by, like yourselves, of third-party institutions where you can take the training program and roll it out to many other places or in groups. The training, as I said earlier, has to entail an exam to qualify for the certification process. So it's not just a program where somebody's going to attend, listen to a lecturer stand up and speak about a load of numbers and chemicals and risk areas. They have to truly understand what these are, write an exam in relation to the subject matters, and get a certified qualification thereafter. The training needs to be inspected and overseen by a certain local authority. Those haven't been decided upon yet in Ireland, but they will be in Germany shortly. And whatever their decisions are will probably be rolled out to similar authorities here in Ireland. So what do you have to do in your plants? Yeah, air monitoring. Air monitoring to determine, is any of this isocyanate in the atmosphere within the working environment of your operators that are running your machines, or edge banders or laminators. This, again, even though the industry and most adhesive suppliers already have air monitoring equipment that can come in and test your work environments, as we can at the moment, that will not be recognized as your annual check. You need to go to a third party, and this needs to be determined in Ireland, which of those third parties and who are they and who can do that in Ireland. This is something maybe the association can start opening discussions within the industry as who is capable of doing these type of monitorings and which of these third parties can be recommended in Ireland. If you look at the material safety data sheets as far as risk categories are concerned, and the amount of isocyanate that can be present within a work environment is currently stated at 5 parts per billion, which is measurable by certain special pieces of equipment. The limit, however, in reality, is going to be less than what the data sheets are currently indicating. And they're probably going to, the indications are that it's going to land up to be 1 part per billion, which is quite a low amount of isocyanate. And if exhaust systems are not properly installed in operations that use these chemicals, it's quite likely that this 1 part per billion will be measured in your factory environments. The equipment that the chemicals are used on also have to be maintained at least once a year. So if you have, and you're working with partners of the likes of McGinn Machinery for BSA machines or any other suppliers of edge banding material, their service levels have to be documented and certified that they've checked for certain parameters of if there is a dangerous chemical being used, that chemical is exhausted into the atmosphere through their regular maintenance programs and their extraction equipments that they have on their machines. The exhaust system themselves also have to be checked and certified on an annual basis, because a lot of companies may have exhaust systems, but the filters aren't checked or changed regularly, and it may be switched on and it may be running, but it is not effective. And these things have to be checked on a regular basis too. So these are, in essence, the obligations of every member or every producer using a polyurethane type chemical. The PPE equipments that are needed whilst using isocyanate, of course, needs to be issued by the working parties or the working groups that are using the equipment. This is generally already in place. Most people are using this. So if you are doing a glue change, to wear goggles, to wear gloves, so that you don't risk the ability to either burn yourself or injure yourself in any way whatsoever. Workers are also going to have an occupational health therapist to come to a workplace and actually have a medical consultation with the people that are using these chemical bases. So you can see then from these obligations that we have that a lot of these things are going to cost something to customers that are going to agree there. And how is this going to be passed on to the final end user? How are people going to be affording to do these things? But if you're going to be using these chemicals, somewhere along the line, you're going to have to start taking these costs into consideration going forward. So again, what I'm going to be showing to you today is the training materials that are going to be available to parties, and they are freely available on these websites at the moment. Nothing has been absolutely finalized yet, so don't start to implement things based on the training programs that are available quite as yet. But at least you can get a flavor of what is needed by going to these various websites. What I'm going to be sharing with everybody at the end of this presentation today is this FICA, which is the Industry Association for Adhesives based in Europe, and their guidelines in a one-sheet flyer that will cover everything that I've discussed and highlighted today. So it will give you a quick one-page reference as to where things are and what the time date stamps are for the various obligations. So that basically covers the isocyanate requirements going forward. And I hope to anything that I haven't scared off the industry about what is required in the near future. But if we're wanting to be responsible as responsible manufacturers and responsible to our staff that we're employing, these are the steps that we have to be taking going forward. And thank you very much for your time.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Bradley. And there's a fair bit of information included in that, I think. And in terms of signposting what's happening, I believe that there's certainly more people, more technically qualified than me, rather, to maybe ask some questions or pertinent questions, perhaps. And if anybody does have a question or observation as to impact, maybe they put up their hand on Zoom or just unmute. And yeah, Knut, I can see you there.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was you flew through that presentation. It was obviously a whole lot more detail and then you could go into the time allowed.
Yes,
My
indeed.
question is, obviously this is something that we need to be looking at straight away to start planning. And the question is around does the manufacturer at this stage have a responsibility to flag products that may be affected by this legislation? In other words, do we have to go through all the data sheets to find out where the parts per million are, or does the manufacturers at some stage get a hurdle to flag these things to the users? Is that part?
There should be, even now, without any regulations, every single chemical that you're using in a plant at the moment is covered by a technical data sheet and a material safety data sheet. Those material safety data sheets are legal documents that are laid out in a 1 to 15 headed format. That's European-wide standard. Those you should have for every single chemical that you have in your plant currently. On there, under section 15 will tell you what the risk categories are for that particular product. But if you have the word polyurethane in the description of any of the products that you're using, in all likelihood, these are the obligations that you're going to have to be going on. The data sheets should be freely available from any of the suppliers that you're currently working with. There should be no restrictions on you getting your hands on it. And also, if you're working with companies like ourselves, once you sign up or start to purchase a product, the person responsible for health and safety within an organization is listed on a database in our organization. And if there is any change or update to that material safety data sheet, an automatic email is sent out with the revised material safety data sheet to that specific responsible person.
Yeah, that sort of answers the question. So what you're basically saying is the responsibility of every user to ensure that they read the data sheets for every product they have in the factory to see whether they need to comply or are exempted or not from the regulation. It's not a responsibility of the manufacturer of the product to flag that their product may or may not be restricted under these new regulations.
Look, I think everyone has a certain amount of responsibility.
No, I understand. Yeah. No,
for example, there's other trigger areas that go through. For example, the invoicing of certain products. You will see that within the description of each invoice, it's also highlighted on the invoices that this is a professional use only product. And if you see those wordings on any invoice, that will also trigger something saying, wow, okay, this product may fall under these risk categories, and it's also another trigger to go off and go and check within your database of chemical use. But at the same time, the adhesive industry and the chemical industry is helped along by across each country and each zone. Those people calling on customers for sure should be discussing these requirements and highlighting the risk factors of these products with the individual customers that they have on an ongoing basis. Another thing that you can look out for sure that can trigger these things off, if you aren't being told, which I think you should be told anyway, but if you're not told, if you walk around your factory and look at the containers that these products are coming in, and look out for the GHS pictogram. If you see the picture of that torso on there, the likelihood is, again, that product is going to be falling under these requirements.
thank you.
We have a question in from Ronan Hazlitt. Brad, the timeframes and again the penalties for non-compliance.
Okay, let me put one other thing up here. This is the document that's going to be shared.
This is the FICA flyer, is it?
This is the FICA flyer, yeah.
Okay.
So here you will see within here the time date stamps as to when all of these training should be finished, when we should be starting. So again, even more labeling requirements on the packs. These will be implemented from 2022. We've already started that already, and that's the pictogram situation that I described. So that's already in operation. But by the end of August 2023, all users and certified people within that should be complete. So that's basically the timeline. So we've got up until next year to get in place the associations that are going to be responsible for training, and from the end of 22 to the middle of 23 to have all that training completed. So there are also just guidelines here within the flyer. It's a 2-page flyer that will give you more details. Yeah.
I wonder, would anybody who maybe is ISO compliant for health and safety, would they have any comments to make? I think what you're alluding to, Brad, is like we all have obligations for health and safety today in the corporate manufacturing world. So I don't know what people, if anybody has relevant comments in that regard, may already be reviewing systems to be ISO certified in that area.
Well, having an ISO certification is really only giving you the documentation to say that you have documented evidence of what you're doing, yeah? But the training program should certainly form part of your ISO standard booklet, so that when you get audited for ISO, that your training programs are within that ISO audit to say, yes, we are up to date or whatever within the things. Has the machines been checked, verified, documented? Has the exhaust system been checked, verified, documented? And of course, then the personnel training.
I think that's
inside your ISO.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's a question in my mind because, you know, notwithstanding somebody taking responsibility, you mentioned the air monitoring, for example. So somebody could be reading the data and understanding things, but they may not be aware that there is a problem.
Sorry, my apologies here. The company put a new telephone system in and it rings on my computer for whatever reason.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
No worries. I was just saying people could be taking prudent steps to manage the facility, but the monitoring piece, you know, monitoring by an independent third party, while they may be taking every effort, if the process piece, which I think you're alluding to, which would come into play under ISO when the regulations are in place, that'll be an important development for, you know, really an appropriate safety standard with some of these chemicals from the chemical.
I agree.
Oh, we lost you.
No, I'm here.
Okay. Right. Anybody else there? We've had a couple of comments now, Brad. Very informative presentation and timely, no doubt. I take it as well, being EU regulation, the sort of level playing field will apply. So again, for people exporting, all states within the EU will have to comply with those regulations.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. No doubt.
Okay. Right. I'm not seeing any other questions there for you, Brad, and no hands up. So thank you for that presentation. On behalf of everybody. Bill, I suppose if anybody has any questions in relation to their business or other issues or Brexit, I suppose for that matter, it's coming. Feel free to table them for the group here. They may want to get some comment. There may be something on their minds that they'd like to share before we finish up.
Michael, I might just mention something there in good morning or afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Brad, for that. Just on the Brexit front, there is an event all week next week. Enterprise Ireland, the Leos, are doing basically webinars every day for each region. So our Northwest, Northeast one is on the Wednesday, but all the regions are being done over the course of the week. And I'm speaking on the Wednesday one, but Catherine from O'Donnell's is speaking on the Southern platform as well, or webinar for the South. So it's just if people want to log into it, it's specifically focused around customs, which is absolutely become very relevant now.
Okay, and we've got that in the system. Have we, Ronnie? We can get that out to members as well. Just notify them to look out for it and maybe put a reference in.
I'll send the link
notification out to everybody.
on to Bill maybe in the afternoon before it to the group.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to say, and I think, Ronan, you mentioned it before, you know, while we're all hopeful and I anticipate a thin deal, there are clearly impacts as of 1st of January, specifically logistically, and other responsibilities having a border between the EU and the UK. So there are things, and they're relatively simple things that people can do to be organized and maybe avoid some simple mistakes that will cause them problems. So I think everybody, if they're not free at this stage, log in.
I'd say, I agreed, Michael, and what I'd also say is regardless of a deal or no deal, it actually doesn't make any difference insofar as there are going to be needs and expectations and continuity requirements for our businesses from the 1st January that goes to the UK, absolutely. But in many ways, anybody that imports as well, so your supply chain from Europe is going to be impacted because about 85% of all goods coming into Ireland are land bridged to the UK. So there's a lot of implications, even if you don't export. Equally, even for Northern Ireland, you know, there will be changes there, but we all trade on an all Ireland basis, I guess, these days. So
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, it's so anyway, there's a good information resource happening next week on those webinars. So just want to share that.
That's it. Thanks very much for that, Ronan. Right. Bill, any other business you'd want to bring to the table?
Well, relative to yourself and some of our other members, Paul is there at the moment. This very marked decline in sales in the office furniture region, are you finding that as well here?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Well, there's kind of two things I'd comment on. I suppose looking at our furniture work, we're certainly down, and I think in line with a number of companies throughout Europe. A little bit of positive on that. Literally this week, I'm happy to say that a couple of projects were secured by architects or leases signed with agents. So one or two of them, and reasonable sizes, 40,000 square feet. I think the KPMG project is also on the move as well. So look, the vaccine has got a green light. I think that's huge. I mean, the UK suggests they have vaccines in play from next week, perhaps. And the uncertainty piece and not having a timeline to act on is hugely important. So as I said to our own team here, is watch this space now to hear some positive developments on people signing a lease or, appointing an architect. Even if it's only one or two, that's hugely positive. And with vaccines in the background, I'd be looking forward to things picking up on that basis in the new year, in the first quarter, certainly.
Good.
Paul, I don't know about your own. Are you there, Paul? I'm not sure Paul is still there. Oh, he is. Yeah, I don't know. Paul Farrell. Paul, if you have any thoughts yourself? No, maybe he's not there.
Sorry, no, I am
No,
here.
no.
I had two mute buttons.
No.
Listen, no, we're actually finding a little bit of positivity this week too, and there's work coming out to price in the office furniture, but our commercial office is decimated. There's no point in saying one thing and meaning another, but the government side is tipping away, and there's a bit of a home office thing going on there, but no, there's definitely been a lift in the last week. And there's definitely, all the talk of nobody coming back into the offices, they'll always work from home, that's gone. People want their staff in the office. Now, I personally don't think they'll come in for 5 days a week ever again, but there'll be some sort of strategy around that. But no, there's definitely a little bit of lift, and I'd certainly be, we'd be aiming for growth next year across all sectors, and there's definitely opportunities. But just one thing about the customs thing and all that crack. Now, I was at a thing there done by Louth County Council or Dundalk Chamber of Commerce, and they said, the groupage, sending stuff by, getting stuff in by groupage and sending stuff out by groupage. If somebody does something wrong with their pallet or something that's not wrong, it can hold up the whole load.
That's right.
And another simple thing is pallets. Like anything we send to the UK, it goes in a pallet, but it has to be some sort of chemical approved pallet. Right. Now, as it turned out, when I said it to our chap, we knew all about it and we're compliant, but I couldn't believe it. But it's the silly things that's going to be a big problem, But on the whole, like the year for us personally, it's below target and everything, but given the year that was in it, it was a fantastic result. We'll make a few pound, never enough, but things are doing reasonably all right. Yeah, and looking forward to the future.
Yeah, I think I'd have to concur there. But as I looking forward, I think we'll all be glad to put this year behind us, but certainly looking to 2021, and I've been involved in management meetings most of this week and across our various areas of business, we're looking forward with a positive outlook. And I think, the fundamentals are in good shape. We're not suffering the problems we suffered at the last crash. And there's money in the market, you know, there's not a lot of debt, so to speak. I'm not referring to national debt and what's going on to support us through COVID. So the opportunity should prevail, and the debt of the office certainly has been greatly exaggerated. I think hybrid working, I think flexible working, it's a factor in our own office here. There'll be new features to how we work. The office will evolve possibly more quickly, but it's onwards, I think, from Q1 next year. That's what, you know, the vaccine's there. No, it's great to hear that, Paul.
Very good, Paul. Yeah.
Right, I see Ronan has popped up the link there, and again, I'm picking up on Paul's last comments. It's the small things. If you don't feel prepared with 1st of January on the horizon, Ronan's point is exactly the point I was trying to make. Well, whether we have a deal or not, there are small issues that may just cause you problems, which will be client problems at the end of the day, ultimately. So, you know, ask as many questions, click into that link on Wednesday to get the updates, and feel free to contact people within the network if you have any concerns or lack of, you know, you need a little bit more information or any comment from another party. Right, Bill, I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah, you can close off with that.
Good presentation. Thank you all for joining us. Bill, actually, just sorry, on the point, I'm not sure, will we be having another call before Christmas, or will we be wishing everybody the
next one is the 9th of January.
Right. Will I be signing off with Happy Christmas then?
Yep.
I should have had the sleigh bells in the background. So sorry about that. All best wishes for the season, and I look forward to seeing, if not, or hearing from individuals sooner, but certainly in the new year. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheerio, guys.
Thanks,
Happy
everybody.
Christmas. Bye-bye.
Happy Christmas.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye then.
Take care. Cheers.